You neither think nor talk like the man I can share my life with. Once your fear had passed, not of what was threatening me, but of what you were being exposed to, and once the danger was over, then as far as you were concerned, it was as if nothing at all had happened. I was your little skylark, just the same as before. Your doll, who you were going to protect twice as carefully as you had before, because it was so weak and fragile, Torvald. Torvald. In that moment, I realized that for 8 years now, I have been living here with a stranger, and I've had 3 children. Oh, God, I can't bear to think about tearing myself into little pieces.
Seems to have opened up between us. But Nora, isn't it possible to close it?
As I am now, I am no wife for you.
I have the strength to change.
Perhaps. If your doll is taken away from me.
Parted from you, Nora. I can't even grasp the thought of it. No, Nora. Wait till tomorrow.
I can't spend the night in the same man's house.
Can't we live here as brother and sister?
Oh, you know perfectly well that wouldn't last. Goodbye, Torvald. I won't go and look at the children because I know that they're in better hands than mine. Can't be anything to them as I am now.
But someday, Nora. Someday.
Who knows? How can I know? I have no idea what I shall turn out to be.
But you're my wife, as you are now, whatever you become.
Listen, Torvald. I've heard that when a wife leaves her husband's house, as I'm doing now, that he is released by law from all his obligations towards her. Well, anyway, I release you from all your obligations. You mustn't feel bound in any way, any more than I shall. There must be complete freedom on both sides. Look. Here's your ring. Give me a ring.
Oh, no, this is well.
This is well. So now it's all over. I'm putting the keys down here. As for the household, well, the maids know about running everything better than I do. Tomorrow, after I've left her, Christina will come and pack the belongings that I brought with me from home, and I'll have them sent on.
It's all over. You ever think of me again?
I'm sure I shall often think of you and my children. And this house.
They're right to you, Nora.
No, never. I won't allow you to do that.
But I must send you.
No, nothing. Nothing.
Oh, I help you should you need it.
I don't accept help from strangers.
Nora. Could I ever be anything more than a stranger to you?
Oh, Torvald. For that, the most wonderful thing of all would have to happen.
Well, tell me what it is, this most wonderful thing of all.
You and I would have to change so much that no, I don't believe in anything wonderful, not anymore.
Tell me, I want to believe it. Change so much that...
Change so much that our life together could become a marriage. Goodbye.
She's gone. The most wonderful thing of all.
So we see in that last scene that Nora has sort of asserted her own sense of self, her autonomy as an individual, and claimed her choice to leave Helmer and her children to experience life for herself on her own and gain that sense of independence. So this idea of freedom, she talks about as being very important. So they return rings to one another and, completely disengage from their relationship. And she even views her husband as a stranger, right? She repeatedly calls him a stranger because they haven't known each other on any in-depth level, right? They're just in this superficial marriage, and they don't know, they have never talked about anything real, so that she feels like they are strangers to one another. So we can see the dramatic conclusion of her decision to leave her husband, her family behind, and emerge sort of out of this cage, imprisoned domestic marriage, and experience life for herself. So it's somewhat of an escape or a flight or a new sense of freedom for her that she's never experienced before. So that bird imagery that's happened all the way through kind of has another connotation here of flight and freedom. And you can see in that final argument between Helmer and Nora that he's trying to sort of shore up all of these patriarchal ideas of women's duty, so a duty to be a woman, a wife, and a mother. But it's not, she can't hold herself to these kind of patriarchal constraints any longer. She's sort of giving up her husband and her children to pursue a life independently. So she sees it as a necessary growth for herself. In order to be a better mother or wife, she has to first become her own person. So there is that connection as well. So she sort of sees it, it's almost like a personal growth that's necessary beyond even gender norms or conventions related to being a wife or a mother or a husband or a son or whatever. Those roles aren't as important as just being a person on your own, learning to become a human, a person, independent of anybody else. So that's sort of her next part of her journey is going to be becoming an individual who has thoughts and feelings of her own, separate from her husband, her children, etc. And then there is some indication, like she does leave the door open a little bit, so to speak, right? She shuts the door, but at the same time, there is maybe a hope that one day these two people could possibly, if there was significant change in both of them, one day reunite. But as it stands right now, she feels as if they are strangers. There is to be no communication between the two of them, and she doesn't want any contact with her husband, her children, or the safety of her home. She's going to go with Christine for now and then learn to take care of herself. And then she talks about, that the only way for them to ever have to be reunited would be as a true marriage. So that's sort of the second line from the very end. So a true marriage in this sense would be two equals, not one who's dominant, one who's passive and submissive, but two equals, both independent, both individuals, both with independence and autonomy coming together as a mutual respect partnership, a true kind of marriage of two beings. But for that to happen, both individuals would have to change, and the greatest miracle of all would be, um, you know, gender equality, basically. So for society would have to probably change for this true marriage to actually be possible. So that's another thing that's sort of part of the larger context of this play, which would be, society itself has to change for these gender roles to also change and evolve, and for marriage, the institution of marriage, to become more on equal footing, right? Where it's a true partnership between two people who love each other and know each other, and respect each other, rather than this kind of, unequal, imbalanced power dynamic between a very authoritative husband and his passive, obedient wife. So there has to be change, social change, for Nora to be married again. Okay, so let's take a little quick look at this article that I posted on the course homepage. So this is the kind of thing you'll find if you go through the library database and look up an academic article. You'll find articles like this one where they're full text, so you can find the full article and go through it. This one is all talking about the ending and the implications of the ending of Doll's House, and he talks about the gender constraints that are evident in this play. So you can sort of scan through the article and identify this author's thesis, which occurs here in the second paragraph. So here we can just scan through. So we can see here a thesis. So I want to accentuate A Doll's House as an analysis of how gender and gender subordination are produced. My overall view is that this drama is not so much about Nora's struggle to find herself as a human being as it is about her shocking experience of being treated as a woman because of the acts that she performs. In contrast to the speculations concentrated in the question, where did Nora go, I see the drama as an investigation into gender difference as a way of acting, which explains my twist to the problem, what did Nora do? So this author is sort of focusing in on the gender context of how Nora's actions are interpreted and how her actions are criticized by her husband. If you scroll down further, this is an interesting point here. So the author here looks at some important quotations, and you can even look at how they integrate their quotations in to their writing. But this paragraph here, so in A Doll's House, Ibsen lets Torvald Helmer argue in a very similar way when in the final scene he is confronted with Nora's threatening emancipation. Referring to gender norms in bourgeois society and in Christianity, he exercises patriarchal power by citing those restraining phrases, quote, first and foremost, you're a wife and a mother, end quote, and, quote, can't you understand your places in your own home? Haven't you something you can rely on for guidance in these matters, religion? Finally, he pushes forward his own authority as her husband, quote, but if you can't be guided by religion, let me stir your conscience. In the acute situation, though, Helmer's attempt to find support in the social and religious institutions fails because it is exactly these institutions that Nora has discovered as her predominant problem. So you can see how this author, he sort of has a topic sentence, he adds evidence, and then he is also commenting on the quotes. So that's a good way of looking at how to structure a body paragraph in your essay. You sort of have you need a strong topic sentence, so what your paragraph is going to be about. You're going to add your evidence in the way of quotations and make sure they're integrated with proper punctuation. And then you're going to end with a concluding sentence that refers back to your thesis statement or more of you unpacking the meaning, the larger significance of the quotations. In this case, this author's pointing out how social and religious institutions like family and religion, those are also tied to a kind of patriarchal, male-dominated society. And Nora can't refer back to her religion or her roles as a wife and a mother because those are the things that are problematic in her life. She can't divorce herself from those things fully, or she can't she has to divorce herself from religion and family in order to find herself as an individual apart from gender constraints.